So a few weeks ago I participated in the GameDev.tv game jam. The theme was Last Stand, and I made an endless wave bullet hell roguelike thing where at the end of each wave you transfer to controlling the last enemy that was left alive. The game is up on itch right now. If you want to play it, I'll leave a link in the description. Overall, the development of the game went really smoothly, and I'm super happy with how it turned out. So yeah, I'll just take you through my week of game jamming. Game Jam started on a Friday, and the theme was announced at 2 p.m. my time. I started off doing some brainstorming just by writing random stuff down, but I actually landed on the idea I went with pretty quickly. I thought originally about doing like kind of a Weebles Wobble but they don't fall down thing, like some sort of puzzle game where you had to knock over things that were really hard to knock over. Funnily enough, the game that won actually did something similar, so maybe I should have gone with that idea instead, I don't know. Regardless, the endless wave thing seemed like it'd be pretty fun and low scope, so I went with that. I really liked the idea where you became the last creature standing at the end of each wave, and that it fit the theme really well. I maybe should have pointed out that it fit the theme more than I did, because then maybe I would have scored higher on theme, but stuff just gets lost in the sauce when you're developing as fiercely as I was, so. By the end of day one, I already basically had the bones of the game in place. I had moving, shooting, and the transferring system all done. So I was pretty happy with my progress. I think day two is really when the game started to become a bullet hell. I've never made a bullet hell personally, and the only one I've played is Enter the Gungeon, and I really suck at it, so bullet hells aren't really my forte, but since I wanted to differentiate the creatures, I just ended up giving them different shooting patterns, and the bullet hell thing sort of just developed naturally. I also added special abilities, which was kind of just like a random addition, again, to sort of differentiate the creatures from each other, and that ended up kind of being like the bread and butter of the game, so it's sort of funny that it was kind of an afterthought. Ain't that just the way, though? At this point, I had a lot of the basic core features down, and I wanted to start making music. Music is one of my favorite parts about game dev and just games in general, so I was super eager to make the music for this game. I also had the idea to kind of make a dynamic music system, and so you might be thinking, oh, did you implement Fmod or WWise? And no, I didn't, because that was the smart idea, and instead I did the dumb idea of building my own dynamic music system from scratch, and it sucked. Basically, the way it worked was I chunked up the music into very short loops, and then I had a queue of these chunks. When the currently playing chunk finished, I checked to see if there was something queued up after that, and if there wasn't, it would just loop that initial chunk. I did this so that as you got into higher level waves, I could add on more intense music and like more elements to the music without having to worry about syncing the BPM or any of that stuff. It works and it does what intended, but the impact of that was like way less than I expected. I thought it was gonna be like really sick, and like it's just sort of like sounds like how the music should sound. It honestly probably would have been way easier just to play the song straight through without the whole chunking and queuing and all that shit. Well, you live and you learn, and like it was kind of a fun challenge, so I'm not too broken up about it. Also, I scored 154th for the music, and that kind of bummed me out because I feel like the two songs I made are like real slappers. This is actually me in post, and I realized after playtesting the game to get some like footage for B-roll that the music just kind of like stops at some point and is super glitchy and weird, which is definitely a result of my stupid music system that I built. So that's probably why people didn't really respond to the music very well, is because like after a minute of gameplay it just completely stops. So my bad. So, I don't know, I'm going to leave up some links of the full tracks in their entirety, not chunked up or anything, and you can let me know what you think. Unless you think they're bad, in which case just keep your comments to yourself, because I'm pretty sensitive about it. Day 4, I was back to coding. I actually added in a status effect system to the different abilities. I kind of realized I needed some upgrades after every other wave or so to make this kind of really feel like a roguelike, and the only thing I could think of was to add status effects, so I ended up adding that on day 4, and I think the status effects actually turned out really well. I don't know how much they really show up when you're playing the game and like how much you kind of realize what they're doing, but the system itself I think is cool. I probably should have just added more. The status effect system is very similar to Hades, and I guess I just had that on the mind because Hades 2 just dropped, and so I've been playing Hades 1 to try to like beat it before I play the new one. Basically, all the special abilities have some sort of hitbox that triggers at some point during the ability, And that hitbox you can add damage or knockback or a status effect to, depending on the different upgrades you get. Status effects that made it into the game are Poison and Slowed, which are pretty self-explanatory. Inked, which makes the creature go blind or whatever. Basically, they just stop shooting and run a random direction. I was sort of thinking of like, you know, when like a squid like inks. I don't know. Enamored, which is like they fall in love with you, so they fight on your side for a little bit. That one's probably my favorite. I think that one turned out really cool. And Trapped, which just stops the creature from moving entirely. The different special abilities that made it into the game are Jump, where the creature just jumps really high up into the air, and while they're in the air, they're invincible, obviously because you can't shoot them. Then they land. That's when like the hitbox kicks in for the jump, is they land. It's an AoE. The Spit ability, which is sort of a short-ranged AoE that aims in the direction you're aiming. But it also blocks incoming bullets, so it kind of acts as a shield and also like a status effect activator. Dash, where you run really fast, and then when you run into creatures, that's like the hitbox activation for that special ability. Dodge, which causes the creature to dodge out of the way, but they leave a trap where they were. And my personal favorite, the Crop Dust ability, where you leave like a trail of fart clouds. I found this ability absolutely hilarious, but I think maybe I'm the only one. It made me laugh really hard when I was building it. I don't really have any footage for day 5, and I think that's because by this point I was back to work, so I was working my day job all day and then working on the game until like 9 or 10 p.m., which is pretty tiring, to be honest. I'm not really like a 12-hour day hustle culture guy normally, so it's not a schedule I could really keep up regularly, but I was willing to do it for the game jam, and if I can pull 12-hour days to complete a game jam, you can subscribe to my channel and like this video to let Daddy YouTube know that I'm doing a good job. Despite not filming anything, I was actually able to make a ton of progress. I was mostly just adding content at this point, more creatures, more abilities, more status effects. I also built the upgrade system that just kind of like randomly shows the player upgrades every other wave. Day 6 through 8 was just kind of like grind mode. I didn't really film anything, and I was just like busting out a lot of content, bug fixes, implementing sound effects, just like all of that stuff. I also implemented like a main menu and stuff using actually BitBrain's game jam template, which is really cool, super useful, you should check it out. I also added bosses to the game, which are basically like bigger creatures with like the classic bullet hell patterns that they shoot, as well as like heat-seeking bombs and then heat-seeking missiles that drop like other creatures as like ads for the boss fight. The bosses obviously needed a new sick beat, so I made that as well. It ended up a lot more dubstep-y than I initially planned, but sometimes that happens. You just trip and fall on your keyboard and accidentally make like a dank drop. I don't know, it just happens. Since story was one of the categories the game jam was judging for, I also added kind of like a cute little cutscene in the beginning. This one I actually did all the art for myself, which I was pretty proud of because I've been practicing my pixel art. I think the cutscene actually came out really well. I've never really done like a cutscene like this before, and it was super easy to implement, and I think it adds like a lot of flavor and polish to the game. This is like the most polished game I've ever made, and I made it in like 10 days, so what's wrong with me? I don't know. On day 9, I was going to fly to New York the next day for work, so I kind of had to finish up the game that day, but it was in a really good spot, so I was feeling pretty good about it. I had some friends playtest the game just to let me know what they thought and see if there's any bugs, and they ended up really liking it. It was actually super fun watching them all play. I had them all up on like Discord streaming, so I was like watching like 10 different streams. That feels braggy. I don't have that many friends. It was like 4 different streams. Anyway, it was fun to hear them get like all hype when they beat a boss and like comparing which creatures they thought were better and stuff like that. I wish I had recorded it or like filmed it at all, but I like completely spaced and I don't have any footage. So you'll just have to take my word for it that I actually do have friends. Basically all day 9 was just kind of like tweaking stuff that my friends had said and just obsessing over it, adding a few more bosses and more creatures. At this point I had a pretty modular system for my creatures, so it was kind of easy just to add new ones and sort of mix and match the different shooting types, the different abilities, etc. I took some screenshots of the game and I put it up on the itch page and I tried to make it look halfway decent, and then I went to bed. On day 10, I checked into my hotel in New York, and I almost completely forgot to make the game public, so that would have been super funny. But alas, I did submit it, and I basically couldn't look at the stats or anything for like the whole next week since I was busy in New York working, which is maybe for the best because I tend to kind of like obsess about this stuff. But yeah, that was pretty much my week of game jamming. I think it went really well. I had a ton of fun making the game. I forgot how fun it can be to make like an action game. I feel like the last couple games that I've like seriously worked on, like roguelike Dungeon Tycoon and that House in Hand game that I made a while ago, are sort of like strategy kind of data heavy games, and they require like, I don't know, like a lot of like meta thought and like complex systems and shit. This game was just like pure bare bones like action, and it was just like a ton of fun. I placed 125th overall, which is pretty good considering there was like 1,117 I think entries. So almost top 10%, which I don't know, feels pretty good for my first ever game jam that I completed. Although the voting felt kind of weird because I only got like 6 ratings, but like the higher rated games got like a bunch, like 50 or something, and then like the top game only got like 10, so I don't know if that's like an actual accurate judge of like the game or other games. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Nobody like won anything. We all won because we all had a good time, you know. The real journey is the friends you make along the way. I didn't make any friends, but yeah. I also placed 69th for fun. So that's cool. It's a super fun experience overall. I'm really glad I did it, and yeah, thanks for watching the video, and go play the game. I know the game jam's over, but it'd still be cool to know what you think of it, and I don't know, get any feedback or advice or whatever. Let me know if you like the songs, blah blah blah. Yeah, see you next time.